Ziba stood in the small, hot kitchen of their rented home in Abumi, Benin. She was 8 months pregnant. Her back ached, her feet were swollen, and her eyes showed the kind of tiredness that sleep couldn't fix. But there was no rest for her. From the living room, her husband Kwame's loud voice crashed through the walls. "My friends are not here to starve, move," he shouted. Ziba flinched. Her hands shook slightly as she wiped her tears with the corner of her dress. She didn't talk back. She never did. Slowly, painfully, she limped over to the bubbling pot on the stove. The heat was heavy, thick in the air. She stirred the stew carefully, her tears falling quietly into the steam. In the next room, Kwame and his 6 friends were laughing loudly, drinking, playing loud music. They came every week, and every week Ziba cooked for them, cleaned up after them, and stayed silent. She didn't eat until they were full. She didn't rest until the house was spotless. No one ever asked how she was feeling. No one noticed her pain. She was invisible. But tonight, as she stirred the food, something inside her began to shift. It was small, just a flicker. But it was there. A quiet thought, a whisper in her heart, enough. She didn't cry loudly. She didn't scream. But deep inside her, a plan was forming. And this time, she wasn't going to be the one who walked away hurting. Every single week, like clockwork, Kwame brought 6 of his loud, careless friends into their small house. They laughed too hard, talked too much, and made a mess everywhere. They never greeted Ziba or asked how she was doing. They didn't care. To them, she was just the one who brought the food, cleaned the dishes, and disappeared. And to Kwame, she was just someone to show off, like she was part of the furniture. Every time they came, he made her cook big meals, even when she was tired, even when her body begged for rest. 8 months pregnant, barely able to stand for long, she would still be in the kitchen all day, chopping vegetables, boiling rice, frying meat, sweating in the heat. And when the food was ready, she had to serve it with a smile, like she was happy to be treated this way. One evening, after another long day, Ziba was standing near the sink. Her feet were burning. Her back felt like it would snap. Her hands were shaking slightly. Kwame was sitting on the couch, scrolling on his phone. She took a deep breath and said very softly, almost like a whisper, "Can we order food tonight?" Kwame didn't even look up. In one quick movement, he stood up, walked to her, and slapped her hard across the face. Her head snapped to the side. The room felt silent for a second. Then he shouted, "You're only good for 2 things, cooking and carrying my child." Ziba stood still. Her cheek was red. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. She had cried enough. Too many nights. Too many times. She looked at him, but not with fear this time. Something had changed. She nodded slowly, as if saying, "I understand." But in her heart, she didn't accept it. Not anymore. That night, Kwame laughed with his friends again, louder than ever, as if nothing had happened. But Ziba sat quietly in the corner, her hands resting on her belly. She wasn't thinking about pain anymore. She was thinking about power. She didn't scream. She didn't argue. She just listened, and planned. She started noticing things. Little things. The way Kwame always hid his phone when he was around her. The way one of his friends once called him player and laughed. The way he bragged about women when he thought she wasn't listening. She began to watch closely, and what she found made her sick. But also, it made her calm. Because now she had something. Proof. And soon, he would feel what she had been feeling for years. From that day, Ziba was different. She moved the same. She cooked the same. She even smiled the same. But her heart was no longer afraid. It was preparing. She knew exactly what she was going to do. She was done being silent. She was done being the one who suffered in the background. A quiet fire burned in her eyes now. She wasn't just a pregnant wife anymore. She was the storm that was coming. That night, Reby didn't cry. Not even a single tear. She lay on the small mattress in the corner of their bedroom, holding her belly gently. The room was dark, but her mind was wide awake. The slap still burned on her cheek, but the pain didn't matter anymore. She stared at the ceiling, her thoughts quiet but sharp. Something inside her had changed. The woman who always stayed silent was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who had finally had enough. Very slowly, she reached under the mattress and pulled out a small, old phone. She hadn't used it in months. She made sure Kwame was snoring loudly in the next room before dialing. The call was short. Just 4 words. This Friday. Be ready. Then she ended the call and hid the phone again. Her heart was calm. No fear. No panic. Just peace. Because now she knew exactly what she needed to do. The next morning, she got up early. She smiled when Kwame asked what was for breakfast. She didn't show any anger. She didn't bring up the slap. She just acted like everything was normal. That was her power now, calm silence. Over the next 2 days, Reby worked in the kitchen like never before. She cooked with care, with focus. She chopped, stirred, and seasoned every dish perfectly. She cleaned the house from top to bottom. She even ironed the best tablecloth and made sure all the plates were shining. To anyone watching, it looked like she was just being a good wife. But inside, she was building something bigger. She wasn't just preparing food. She was preparing a lesson. She went to the market and bought everything fresh: vegetables, spices, meats, and drinks. She bargained like always, but this time with a steady smile. She was planning the perfect meal. Not just any meal, one that no one would ever forget. As she mixed the ingredients, she thought of all the nights she went hungry. All the times she cried herself to sleep. All the times Kwame laughed while she suffered. But this time, she didn't cry. Not even once. When the food was finally done, she looked at it all laid out in the kitchen. It smelled delicious. Everything was perfect. The jollof rice was bright and full of flavor. The meat stew was rich and spicy. The fried plantains were golden and sweet. Even the drinks were set up nicely in a line with ice ready to serve. But most importantly, she had prepared something special under each plate, something that would break the silence forever. Reby stood in the kitchen, looking at the table. Her hands were tired, her feet sore, but her spirit felt strong. She wasn't scared. She wasn't angry. She was ready. Friday was coming, and so was the truth. She had waited long enough. For years, she had served quietly. But now, it was her time to speak, without shouting, without crying. Her words would be in the taste, in the silence, in the surprise. This wasn't just a meal. It was her revenge. Friday came just like every other week. The sun was hot over Abumi, and the air felt heavy. By the evening, the house was full of noise. Kwame's friends came in loud as always, talking over each other, laughing at old jokes, and dropping themselves into chairs like they owned the place. They smelled of beer and sweat, and the small living room filled with their noise and their pride. Kwame was at the center of it all, sitting back with a drink in his hand and a big smile on his face. He looked over at Reby, who was moving between the kitchen and the table, carefully placing down each plate like she was serving royalty. He smirked and said loudly, "Even pregnant, she knows her place." The men laughed, some shaking their heads in approval. They saw Reby as nothing more than the quiet wife, good for cooking, cleaning, and saying nothing. They didn't notice the calm in her eyes. They didn't see the strength in the way she moved. All they cared about was the food. And the food was perfect. The jollof rice was soft and spicy, the grilled chicken was rich with flavor, and the plantains were golden and sweet. The table was full, and the men dug in with greedy hands and loud chewing. They toasted to themselves, drank cold drinks, and filled their stomachs. For them, it was another night of power, jokes, and pleasure. Then, something strange happened. One of the men lifted his plate to pour some more sauce. That's when he saw it, a folded piece of paper stuck underneath. He pulled it off, confused, and opened it. At first, he squinted, trying to understand what he was looking at. Then his face changed. His eyes went wide. His smile faded. "What is this?" he asked, his voice sharp. The room went quiet. Another man checked under his plate. Then another. Soon, all 6 of them were holding papers. Some had screenshots. Some had printed messages. Some had photos. And all of them showed one thing: Kwame had been sleeping with their wives, their girlfriends, women they trusted. "You slept with my wife," one of the men growled, holding the paper in the air. "You said she meant nothing to you, but this," another shouted, waving his note. Kwame froze. His mouth opened, but no words came. His drink slipped from his hand and crashed on the floor. The men stood up. The table shook. A chair flew. A fist hit his face. The room turned into chaos. In the middle of all the yelling and fighting, Ziba stepped out of the kitchen. Her face was calm. Her hospital bag was in her hand. She didn't rush. She didn't cry. She looked at Kwame, now bloody and confused, and spoke just one sentence. "Next time, cook your own betrayal." Then, without another word, she turned around and walked out the front door. The room had gone quiet, like someone had pressed pause on all the noise. The laughter was gone. The chewing stopped. The smell of hot jollof rice still filled the air, but no one was eating anymore. One by one, the men at the table reached under their plates. Each found the same thing, a small, sealed white envelope. It was clean, neatly folded, and had no name on it. Just silent paper waiting to speak. They looked at each other, confused, unsure. Then they began to open the envelopes. Inside each one were printed screenshots, clear, sharp, and undeniable. There were text messages, photos, even voice message transcripts. At first, they thought it was a joke. But it wasn't. These were real conversations, from real phones. And the name that showed up again and again, was Kwame's. One man's hand started shaking as he held up a photo of Kwame smiling beside his girlfriend at a hotel. Another saw messages between Kwame and his wife, sweet lies, bold words, things no friend should ever say. Another read a flirty message thread that made his stomach turn. "What is this, man?" one of them whispered, his voice full of confusion and pain. "No, no way," another said, staring at the paper like it might catch fire in his hands. But the truth was there, printed in black and white. Kwame had been sleeping with their women. Not once. Not by accident. Many times. With more than one. He had lied, cheated, and laughed behind their backs for months. Gasps filled the room like broken glass. Chairs creaked as some men stood. One man slammed his fist on the table. Another ripped his envelope in half, shouting, "You think we're stupid?" Kwame sat frozen, his face turning pale. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His usual smirk had disappeared. The pride in his voice, the one he used just minutes earlier to brag about Ziba, was gone. He looked like a man who had just realized the fire he started was now burning through his own house. One friend stood up slowly and pointed at him, shaking with anger. "You were in my house. You held my child. And this is what you were doing behind my back." Another shouted, "You gave me advice about women while you were in bed with mine." The tension snapped. A chair flew. A glass hit the wall. A punch landed straight on Kwame's face. The table tipped. Plates crashed to the floor. Chaos exploded inside the room. Years of fake friendship, broken trust, and buried betrayal had all come out, because of the quiet woman they all ignored. And as the noise grew louder, no one noticed Ziba standing in the hallway. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was calm. Her hospital bag was packed, her shoulders were light, and her eyes were clear. She watched the scene for a moment, just enough to know it was done. Then she turned away, her feet steady, her heart finally free. The living room was a war zone now. Voices shouted over each other. Angry words flew like fire. One of the chairs hit the wall with a loud bang, flipping over as someone shoved it aside. Another man stood up, face red with rage, and punched Kwame straight in the jaw. The sound of the hit echoed. Kwame fell hard, knocking into the table, sending a plate crashing to the ground. Blood dripped from his mouth. He tried to speak, to explain, but no one wanted to hear it. The men who once called him brother now looked at him like a stranger. A traitor. You lied to all of us, one yelled. You sat at our tables, gave us advice, and all the while you were with our women, shouted another. They weren't just angry, they were hurt. Deeply hurt. Because betrayal from a stranger is one thing. But betrayal from a friend? That cuts the soul. Kwame crawled back, hands up, his face full of fear. The man who once shouted at his wife and laughed in power was now begging with his eyes. But no one was listening anymore. And then, everything stopped. Ziba appeared in the doorway, holding her hospital bag. She didn't need to yell. She didn't need to say much. Her presence alone was enough to silence the entire room. Everyone turned to look at her. Her belly was full, her body tired, but her spirit stood tall, stronger than ever before. Her eyes met Kwame's. He was on the floor, blood on his shirt, surrounded by broken trust and broken furniture. She took one step forward, just enough to be seen clearly. Then, with the softest but sharpest voice, she spoke. Next time, cook your own betrayal. It wasn't just a sentence. It was a sentence that slammed every door he'd ever opened to disrespect her. A sentence that reminded him she was done serving, done suffering, done pretending. Then, without saying another word, Ziba turned around and walked out the door. She didn't rush. She didn't look back. She didn't need anyone's help. Her steps were slow, steady, peaceful. Like she was walking into a better life. Because she was. Behind her, chaos. A house full of lies, pain, and the man who used to control everything now lying weak on the floor. But in front of her, freedom. Freedom from the yelling, the insults, the fake smiles around a fake table. The night air met her skin. It was quiet outside. Peaceful. For the first time in years, her heart felt light. Ziba knew she was walking away from everything that tried to break her. But more importantly, she was walking toward something new. A life that would be hers. A future she would build with her own hands. No more begging. No more bruises. No more waiting to be seen. This time, she would make the rules. And she would never let anyone silence her again. 2 months passed. The sun still rose the same way over Abumi, but everything had changed for Ziba. People had heard the story. Some whispered it, some shared it like fire, and some celebrated her strength. But Ziba didn't waste time looking back. She was busy building something new, something that belonged only to her. Then one morning, a video ad popped up online. It was simple but powerful. A warm, colorful table was shown, full of delicious food, jollof rice, grilled fish, sweet fried plantains, spicy soups, all made with care and love. And then the words appeared on the screen in bold, golden letters. Zeba's table, where respect is always on the menu. The internet went wild. People shared it thousands of times. Women cheered. Men watched in silence. Everyone knew who she was now. The woman who walked out with her hospital bag, had walked into her power. Zeba's small catering business turned into a growing name. Orders came from every corner of town. People waited in line just to taste her food. But more than the taste, they respected her story. Every plate she served came with something extra, dignity. Meanwhile, Kwame's world crumbled. His friends were gone. His phone didn't ring anymore. He lost his job. His face, once full of pride, now stayed hidden behind closed windows. And his mouth? Still silent. Because while he was left with nothing, Zeba had everything, peace, purpose, and a full table, set on her own terms.